Thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Real Spill, a podcast where I spill on all things multifamily advocacy and how we as industry professionals can work with our elected officials, stakeholders, and allies to bring about change for the rental housing industry. My guests are subject matter experts whose unique perspectives will help listeners understand how the issues impact them. Let's get into The Real Spill. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Real Spill here on the Multifamily Media Network. And with me today is someone that I absolutely adore, and I'm so thankful that he was able to join me today because he is a very busy man. It's Bobby Griffith. Welcome, Bobby.
Glad to be here, Katie. I've been looking forward to this. Thanks for asking.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Of course, I know who you are. A lot of folks with NAA know who you are. You're known as Pac-Man. Would you introduce yourself for listeners and tell them what you do?
Well, I'm Bobby Griffith, and I am a principal in the CFO of J.O. We are a management company, a development company, and we own what we manage. We have 158 properties in 5 states. I'm in Texas, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, but mostly New Mexico. And we are strictly in the affordable housing industry. We tried the conventional market and we just weren't good at it. So we said, we're just going to stay in our lane and let the big boys do the conventional. So we love affordable housing.
Well, and somebody's got to do it and somebody's got to do it right. You've been busy lately. We were trying to get together since last year. And you want to tell folks what happened when you thought you were going to slow down?
I had made a promise to myself 2 years ago that I wasn't going to work on Fridays anymore. I never said I was going to retire, and I haven't actually done that yet. And so right when I thought 2005 is going to be a really easy year for me, and in October of 2024, we had an opportunity to buy and acquire 30 new properties. So we closed on that deal as of December 31st, 2024, and onboarding that many new employees. There were 88 with the deal, and the properties that we got, it was quite an embarkment. We also opened another office in Lubbock, Texas. We currently have an office in Albuquerque, Las Cruces, in Farmington, New Mexico, but now we have an office in Lubbock. So all of that was quite a bit of an undertaking. So I wasn't home much during the holidays. I was actually traveling to all the new properties and inspecting those and making sure they were what we thought they were going to be.
That's amazing. And life is what happens when we make plans. Yes. We set our intention. This is what we're going to do.
That's
and then
right.
Life says, here's this opportunity. Don't you want to try this? It's like the most property management thing ever to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'd love for listeners to know how we met. And it's through the PAC ambassadors.
That's right.
Oh.
Let me just tell you, I started in this industry in 1985, and that's all I've ever done. I was actually asked by one of my church friends to come help him. And I didn't even know what we were doing. And anyway, one thing led to another, and I became a partner of that company and was there for 20 years and then sold out and became a partner in the company I'm in, J.O. And Katie, for your information, those 30 properties were the properties I used to own. So,
wow.
Full circle around. But I'd always been a member of NAMA, which is the National Affordable Housing Management Association, because we were focused on the affordable industry. And a lot of my friends kept pushing me to be in NAA. And I just said, they're conventional. I didn't see any reason to do it. And I became the president of the Apartment Association in New Mexico and started going to NAA as part of that. And my first meeting that I went to, somehow I was appointed to be on the PAC ambassadors, and I didn't even know what they did. And I'll never forget, Katie, is that we have goals for what we call veterans who have been around a while, or the the newbies. And I think that our goal that year was $500 for newbies. And so I made a comment that I said, well, I've already done my job, so I'm leaving the meeting. I don't have to stay anymore. And my point was, is we set the bar too low. I don't think we were raising that much money. And so because of that, there was a lot of people like you that were included that were gung ho and very passionate about raising money for the purposes of our PAC, but we really weren't pushing it. So I was on that. I was the PAC ambassador chair the year we hit $1 million, the first time we ever did that. And I was required or made to or volunteered, I'm not sure, but I had to wear a Pac-Man suit. And I went all through a meeting while the chair was speaking at Advocate. And I was raising money, and we hit $1 million while I was walking around to the tables. But it was all, I think it was just people being aware of what really needs to happen. But that's how we met, was ambassadors. And you've just been somebody that's always been there, and it's very, very important to me to have people like you in my life. It just really makes me more excited about what I do.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And you were an amazing chair and someone that I've looked up to as a mentor, and someone I always look for at any conference that I'm going to. I'm always like, okay, where's Bobby? I got to go get my hug and get welcome. It's not an official conference until I get my Bobby hug. And being in that meeting room that day, as you were walking around, I think, and I may be wrong, but I think we raised $40,000.
We did.
Like that. I mean, I have never seen such ever. And when people never know, I mean, Pac-Man may be coming back, we never know what might happen at this year's Advocate conference. So that was certainly one of the coolest things that I'd seen is the chairs up giving that speech and telling them how important it is that, we raise funds, because we are just the wrong folks, uninformed folks, away from having some horrible regulations placed on our industry. And the PAC works. It certainly does. And you're right. It's so important to have folks at the helm. And it definitely teed me up to chair after Michelle Lorick, who's also from South Carolina. And we've done so well as ambassadors. But for folks that don't know, like you said, you don't stay with the status quo. One of the things that was very important to you was like, okay, I'm going to challenge you all. Tell folks about that challenge. You went around and said, set your goal higher.
Well, I find myself, whenever I'm either involved or have a leadership role, I personally believe that all the people in the room have the same goal, that, especially when we're talking about volunteer. So there's not a whole lot of arm twisting that I think needs to be done. I think we just need to get after it. And I think some leaders are just afraid to push, if you will. But I remember the meeting that you're talking about, our goals that were set prior to my chair position were pretty low. But that year, I remember some of the people in the room were setting their goals at raising $50,000 instead, where the goal had been $2,000 maybe the year before. There were some of us that set our goals at $70,000. But what I did is I made everybody in the room go around the table. I don't like doing that. Well, get back with us and let us know. Let's just I don't think it's putting people on the spot, because I think when you get together collectively, I think that it inspires everybody and they're willing to do it. We got to set the bar high in whatever we're doing. And I also remember that the PAC Board of Trustees chair was in the room, and they needed 10 people to raise $10,000 each. And they had been to their meeting and only got one. And in our meeting, we got the other. I think we got about 14 more. So we surpassed what they needed. But I think that my leadership style I don't think it's abrasive, but I don't think it's laid back either. we're going to get after it. You guys are here for the same reason I am, so let's get after it. And I'm surprised that all of us are, I think, that we can raise more money than we think we can, especially when we're passionate about the reason that we're raising the money.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it definitely called people to the carpet, but in a good way. Like you said, it wasn't abrasive. Everybody's there. They're representing not only their region, their company, their affiliate. These are the best of the best that are sitting around these tables at our national conferences that have been selected. I was shocked and I chuckled at first because I didn't realize our region regional VPs, RVPs, they draft us. Like when I went through Leadership Lyceum, the first year that we had it for my affiliate here in South Carolina for Upper State, we're sitting there and they're like, yes, there's draft day. And I'm like, and they're like, no, seriously. And I'm like, Chris Carter. And at the time it was Susan Passmore and Susan Stroud. We have Brett Dukes. Like they drafted us. Like, yeah. Like you don't just, it's not just you sign up and you get on a committee for NAA. You have to be selected. Now there's even a further vetting process for that. So these people are there, they're passionate. And I've heard Mike Holmes, former chair, who's from our affiliate, say people just need to be asked. They just need to be asked.
That's right. That's right.
And you were great at that. And just calling people, holding them to account, reminding them of why we are there. We're there to raise money. And if we ever want to have the same impact that the realtors do for our PAC, like our PAC, not our, then we've got to continue to raise the funds to show that we will put our money where our mouth is.
Absolutely.
And now you work in affordable, and you talked about there being a misconception with thinking, oh, well, NAA, it's the conventional guys, it's your big dogs. But what misconceptions do you think are out there about housing affordability, affordable housing?
Well, there's probably a lot of misconceptions, but the one that I found to be the most puzzling at the very beginning of my career, I was born and raised in West Texas. So when I started in this industry, I was in West Texas, and I was in D.C. talking to one of our representatives from the Amarillo area, and he was Representative Bivens. I'll never forget. It was probably 1986 when I was sitting down with him. I think the reason I remember that name because his family owned most of Amarillo. They had libraries and schools named after. But when I sat down and we were talking about affordable housing, his conception is that we were the public housing that gets a lot of bad publicity, especially in those days. It was really bad. And I said, no, you don't understand. These are privately owned, subsidized properties. And he was like shocked. I've never heard of that. So one of the things I think that happens in affordable housing, and maybe it's getting better, but they put us in that category of public housing, and they don't realize where we're at. So education of our representatives is critically important so that they understand. I think that, as you know, right now with Doge and everything that else is going on, that a lot of the things associated directly with the government are on the chopping block. But when they realize that it's private investors that have staked a lot of their resources and assets out there to build these properties, I think they have a little different. And then I'll just tell one story that I was reminded of just the other day. In 2011 in New Mexico, we started having a conference. We'd never had conferences here. And me and a few other of my peers, companies, we started our conference. And I think the second year that we had it, my mother had just passed away. And so my dad, I invited him to our conference, in which our company brings every one of our employees. It's sort of mandatory, but they love it. It's fun. We get away from their properties and a lot of learning, but a lot of good times. So my dad was there for a few days and visited with my employees and saw pictures of our properties. And so, Katie, I'm going to get emotional a couple of times during this interview. He stood up, or he asked me, he said, can I speak? And this was just within the J.O. grade portion, apart from the conference itself, because we met a couple of days before. And he stood up and he said, And he was crying. He goes, I have to tell you, I've not been proud of my son. Well, before he finished, I'm thinking, what in the world? And he said, I thought you were a slumlord. You were in Section 8 housing. And I never wanted anybody to know what you did for a living. So when I told my friends about what you did, I just said you were in real estate. He said, and I come here and I meet all these great people and I see all these beautiful properties that are anybody would be proud to live in. He said, my whole mindset about what you did for a living changed. And right there, he sort of apologized to me, but it hit even harder. It was sort of like going back to that representative who had a misconception. And here I am. My father doesn't even know what I do for a living, really. I mean, I chose not to talk about what I did with my family because that's not really who I am. I mean, I'm passionate about it. But my point is, it just adds to about the misconception that most people have of affordable housing. And we have got to do a better job. So, right then and there, when my dad, who was my father and very close, we didn't have a problem with each other. And I thought, he doesn't even know. So, it became it's part of my mission to make sure that people understood what affordable housing was really all about.
And what a touching moment with your dad, too. Like everyone wants to hear their dad say they're proud of them.
Yeah. And he said he wasn't. So it's like,
exactly.
Oh, I thought you loved me, Dad.
Right. And it's definitely a profound moment. I can imagine, like in your life, like that's life changing. That's one of those things.
And I think it was cool because I think almost everyone that works for me and my partners really thought about that. And that we all, because there's a lot of good companies out there, but we're talking about mine, and we do a great job of building a beautiful property with nice apartments, and we really do everything we can to assure that our residents have a great home to raise their families. And so, we're very proud of that. But, they say if you don't toot your own horn, nobody else will. So we've had to sort of promote that to really push it and show what we do, not just our company, but in the affordable housing industry. We've got to push that.
Oh yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. It's about the resident experience. I mean, yes. It's taking care of them. It's been my thought. You take care of them and your employees, and they'll take care of your bottom line.
That's right.
It's so important. Like where people live, it's their safe haven. It's they get home and they relax. It's where they can be their true and authentic self. And right. The stories that are out there and things that I see as I subscribe to 1 million search words on Google to keep up to date with the industry for our firm. But there's not the best stories that are out there sometimes. And it's unfortunately the bad actors that are giving the industry a bad name at times. And it is so important that we tell the true stories. And like you say, what your experience is with your company, that is the norm, not the exception. But yet we seem to hear more about the exception than the norm. It's insane. And we've got that opportunity in the next few weeks when we head to DC to advocate on the Hill to tell the stories. And we have a lot of freshman members of Congress. So a lot of people are going to be hearing for the first time about the rental housing industry from how many people? We were talking offline. Did you say are registered for Advocate this year?
Over 800 that I know of.
Wow.
That
was amazing.
2 or 3 weeks ago, that number.
Gosh, that is amazing. And we're going to continue, I think, to just break those records. And it's our job to, like you said, we have to toot our own horn. We have to go there and tell them this is what the rental housing industry is. And, that we really do lead the way home, as the slogan for NAA is. Now, what are you most looking forward to at this year's Advocate conference? Anything in particular?
No, I don't really know that I have anything. This is my busiest year this year at NAA. I'm in my second year as a regional vice president from Region 6. I'm on the board of directors. I was just appointed to the governance committee, which that's been a really interesting committee. I'm not only on the PAC ambassadors, but I'm also on the PAC board of trustees. And then in November, I was part of the education, I think it's EAE or whatever, where we choose the classes that'll be apartmentalized. So it's been really busy. And so I was really excited about this upcoming time before Congress, but unfortunately, we don't really have our bullet points like we have in the past, where we've had A, B, C, D. This is what we're going to talk about. And so I think we're gathering our thoughts. I think we're going to be talking a little bit about tax reform and things of that nature. But I think our group out of New Mexico, when we talk to our people, we're going to focus on just making them understand about, we need to partner up. In some states, it's different, but in New Mexico, and that's what I'll speak to, the multifamily industry, not affordable by itself, but is under attack. It is constant. At our state, we're in the middle of, or we're towards the end of our legislative session in New Mexico, and rent control and sealing records for people who have been evicted. They want to seal their records for being evicted, but it's okay if we find out you're a murderer. But God forbid if we tell somebody you were evicted. And all these so-called tenant rights are going to really hurt our industry. And so that's what I'm focused on. But what I'm really excited about, Katie, and what I like more than anything is, even though the heal's important, and I do think we do a good job, and I think it's the follow-up afterwards, not just that one meeting. But for me, it's networking with people like you and all of our peers and finding out what's going on in other parts of the country and feeling that we're united and not just separated into our own little areas of the world. And so I always look forward to that. I love our committee meetings. I think we get a lot done. We're changing our affordable housing focus. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, Katie, but affordable housing, I told you at the beginning that I was part of NAMA because NAA didn't have anything to offer. And the Affordable Housing Committee with NAA is 9 years old. So it's a relative baby within the association. And it's one of the fastest growing committees that there is. And I'm very proud of that. And, there's so many things that we can do at Advocate. But this year, I think it's going to be, my focus is going to be on the committees and the networking.
And you chair affordable housing this year too, is that right?
I do. I chair affordable housing. I'm proud of that. You were talking about, I have to laugh because my story's stupid, but you said that, we have to be vetted to get on committees. And so the first year that I came, I was put on affordable housing and membership and PAC ambassadors, and I didn't do anything. I didn't ask to be on it. I didn't. So the next year, I was still on PAC ambassadors. I wasn't on membership. And then, anyway, I think it was the third year that I wasn't on affordable housing. And so, well, wait, you've got to fill out this form and you've got to do this. And I go, I've been on it. How did I get? So I researched and found out that some people put me on there without, whether I volunteered or not, just some people in the industry that knew. So yes, it is true that we have to be vetted, but I didn't know that for 2 or 3 years. And now, just as letting you know, I don't think it's a big problem, but we're changing our committee structures. And one of the things that's going to happen is some of them are going to be open, that if you want to be on, all you have to do is apply, through NAA. And as long as you recognize that you're a member, you're going to get to be on some committees that won't have we're not going to have a limit of how many can be on it. And I really push for that because I think, Katie, for example, one of the committees is PAC ambassadors. The more the merrier that we have raising money. It doesn't matter how many's on that committee, fill that room up and get a bigger room if we have to. And I feel the same way about affordable housing. And then there are some that are going to be definitely have a limit to it. And there's reasons for that, and I agree with it. But I like the ones that are going to be just sort of, in a sense, blown open. And then we can get more people throughout the country to be a part of that and not have to worry, well, we're only choosing 2 from each region, and the third person that really wanted to serve doesn't get that chance. So we're going to be opening up the door for a lot more participation in our committees.
Love that. And there's so much competition where I am in Region 4 that for the past couple of years, people were begging to get on committees. Like they just did not have enough slots. So that's going to be
Yes.
wonderful. And another thing folks can do, if you know the chair of the committee, you've got to hit it in the sweet spot, but you can request a chair's appointment. Like, what I do for our firm, I'm our legislative and regulatory programs administrator. And I was on legislative in 2021 when I was still on site. And then when 2022, 2023, I applied, hello, my baby, hello, my honey, like the song and dance, and didn't get selected.
Yeah.
Well, this year I didn't get selected again, and I ran into Kurt Kanabe in the hallway at AOD, and he was fixing to have dinner with our 2025 chair, Alan King. And I held up my badge, which you and I are the same. I'm sure you have this too. I have a drawer full of just of my badges, but I held it up and showed him my title for the firm, and I said, Kurt, I wasn't selected. Would you do a chair's appointment for me? And he said, well, I'm having dinner with our chair this evening. And the next thing I knew, I got an email, you've been selected. And so that'll be wonderful for the folks that want to serve on PAC ambassadors, because it is so important that we don't limit our ambassadors, and we have opportunities to go and speak in different affiliates, and you can, wherever you are. Like, I like the year that we helped affiliates that were struggling to meet their fair share. And we contact the AE. Hey, let's hop on a Zoom. The easiest people to go after are your board members. Make it a part of your policies, procedures, like they've got to contribute to the PAC, and there you go.
I was actually appointed, and now it doesn't matter because you can be on it, but I was appointed a lifetime member of PAC ambassadors. So I didn't have to be chosen to serve on that committee anymore. And I think that's the right mentality. Let's take the people who love it. I don't care if there's 100 people in that room. I mean, if you've got that many, that might sound crazy, but right now the Affordable Housing Committee is a huge committee. And I think COVID, one thing it did for us is this, where we're going to be streaming with each other and virtual meetings. And so in our affordable housing group, we have 2 subcommittees, and they meet once a month. And then the leaders from that meet with me and my vice chair, and we meet once a month. And so it doesn't matter how many we have, and we could have more subcommittees. So we're getting more work done under this virtual meeting time than we used to, I believe, in all committees. And I think that it's just amazing. And so my point is that I'm hoping that what changes we're making at NAA, we're going to find some people that are flowers waiting to bloom. They just haven't had the opportunity to be in meetings. They don't get to sit at the table, if you will, and they're afraid to talk. But we can get those people that are passionate like we are to be in the room. That's going to make our association so much stronger. And I think that when we have an association like ours, it makes a big difference on the Hill. And when we go in numbers and we raise as much money and and give it all away, we're giving away over $1 million a year now to our Congress people and to some of the things we believe in. I think it gives us a seat at the table. It doesn't just get them elected or reelected, but it gives us and you're living proof of that just out there talking and making friends. I know that you're called upon to be an expert when they have questions, your representatives, whether it's state or federal. And that's what I think all of us need to be, is that someone that our reps can talk to and get information about, get our point of view. We need more and more of that. We don't need just these bills crammed down our people's throats. They need to understand what they are. And so, but they're never going to listen to us unless we talk. You said it earlier. You got to speak up. You got to ask.
And the more people we get to the table to see that the Congress, I don't think any of us have ever been bitten talking to a member of Congress, right? Like they're afraid, but when they think about it, and especially with the committees in South Carolina that I chair for the state association and my local affiliate, that I'm not the chair. They've given me a title, basically, like I'm over it, but I am mentoring a chair. I've got a young lady now who is, I mentioned on my last episode, her name's Amanda Davis, and she is with Bell Partners, and she came in through Entryway, which was formerly like Shelters to Shutters, and she won Leasing Consultant of the Year this year. She's amazing, and she's a first timer, but when I put the call out, I need somebody to chair this for me. Like I'm doing stuff on the state and the national level, and I've got this off the ground. I've put it here. We've already doubled our fair share, and it's March the 6th, and I need somebody. She stepped up because she was asked. I put the call out there, and I'm going to mentor her. I'm going to have her come to meetings. As long as you bring them with you, let them watch you and see how you do. It's just like leasing if you can lease an apartment to a perfect stranger who knows nothing about your property, you can tell a member of Congress about your industry.
Yeah, that's right. I agree.
And to your point too about the talking points and all that are normally available beforehand, we've had our big three the past couple of years. And this time it looks like tax reform, which I don't know anything about tax. I know what ad valorem taxes. I probably mispronounced ad valorem, whatever. I know what those taxes are because I used to see them on my P&L statement and on my budget when I managed. But we're going to have to do a really good job if folks aren't already registered for that webinar on the 11th. If you're registered for Advocate, you should have already received that email, but they're going to have to explain it to me like simple Sam and Samantha here, like break it down so that I'm not in there like looking for the adults in the room to explain what's going on because I don't want to look like an idiot. But I like your point too. Like if we have people that still don't quite grasp it enough, if you have to go off the cuff, just start telling them about the industry. Just educate them. We want to be your resource. When anything comes up with housing, call us. We're the experts.
You know, one of the things they say, and I've actually been doing it, I didn't know any other way, is to tell the stories, be personal. For example, a few years back, or maybe more than a few, we were trying to make sure flood insurance stayed in appropriations and that we didn't want to see it go away. Well, I had a property in Hatch, New Mexico. 3 properties were completely destroyed by a flood, and we had displaced all of those residents. We had FEMA trailers come in, and it was a few years. We had to find more land. We were the only game in town. It's Hatch, New Mexico is known for the green chili capital of the world, but there's not very many people that live there. And my point is that when we were talking about flood insurance, I was able to give a real life, detailed analysis of why we need to keep the flood insurance program. And those are the things we don't need to make it facts and business, in my opinion. I think it's real stories about the people that we're providing housing for and who lives with us, the jobs we have created. And I think when you start doing that, I think people that don't know our industry well get a little bit more tied into it from more of a personal standpoint. So those personal stories, I just think, while facts are important and data is good, I still think the personal stories is what people walk away with and never forget.
And that was part of the Advocacy Academy this past year was storytelling. And that's something that Seth helped the entire group with was, okay, what is your story? Because we were having the bill that really didn't go anywhere was the Choice and Affordable Housing Act, which did you guys get to host PDOS Monacchio as well? Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, he actually came to one of my properties in Las Cruces, and we had a meeting. And of course, I had seen him a few times before, but he was very genuine, and I think he's one of the best I've worked with, and now he's gone. Yeah, that's just sad. But at the same time, during that time, I think we made a big impact
Yep, he spoke.
everywhere.
Was it the affordable housing? Yes, it
He
was.
did, he did speak
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I remember that. It was last year, and then he came to Charlotte, and
Oh,
I was invited there, so I got to meet with him too. I have a selfie with him.
oh, right, yeah.
Of course I do.
I
But
suppose you do.
but I found the same thing. He was amazing. He sat there and listened to the stories. We met at I would say it's a Gray Star property. They're townhomes, but they were affordable. Like, I mean, they weren't considered affordable, but as far as like your AMI, the
Yeah,
average family could have afforded to live like a 3 bedroom for like $1,800. I mean,
yeah,
in Charlotte. And it was a great meeting. He was very responsive, wanted to make sure everyone had his card. And for someone
absolutely.
in his position, like to have partnered with NAA, I just hope that we can get that same type of rapport and relationship with this administration, with whoever is. I don't know if we've placed, I know we have our HUD secretary, Turner, but
We're very close to one of the things we're trying to do at the affordable housing is that meeting that we had with him was, in my opinion, so much better than us working when we come together 3 times a year in person. And so I've requested, and Nicole's working on, and I think we're going to continue for a while, to have speakers like that come and take an hour if they want or whatever, because we can do our working meetings virtual. But when we're all together like that, I think that impact of whether it be HUD or USDA Rural Development or any agency that has an impact on affordable housing, those people in person with us makes a big difference. And so, just as a point, I was it's guys like that who make a difference in our industry, and it's a shame that we've lost him. And that I hate. That's one thing I don't like. Well, I don't want to get into that side, but sometimes political appointees can be bad, but when they're good, they ought to just stay there. You know,
oh yeah, because housing shouldn't be a partisan issue.
I agree. It shouldn't be.
No, it really shouldn't. And you could tell his heart was in it. Like
Yes, absolutely.
he made it a point. He asked great questions. There were members from a couple of PHAs that were there that could speak to their experiences. He wanted to understand what breakdowns were happening and what specifically could be done, how he could help.
God, he
And he
could.
was ready. He was ready to put boots on the ground, resources, whatever it was, to help
Right.
bridge any gaps that existed. And we all have the same goal. That's one thing as I get working more into politics, something that really dawned on me was we all really want the same thing. We just sometimes disagree on how to get
How
there.
to get there. That's correct.
Yeah. I hope we'll find whoever this, the replacement is. What was it? The principal deputy assistant secretary is what PDOS stands for, if I remember correctly.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So whoever takes his place, they've got some big shoes to fill.
they do. They do.
And I remember also we brought into the legislative committee meeting at Advocate last year one of the authors of the CARES Act. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember her dress. I was sitting next to Lindsay Reeser, who was the Greater Charlotte's Government Affairs Director, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that's a da 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 dress." And I'm like, oh. So we're over there talking, but it was interesting to hear from her.
Well, sometimes I think that there's the secretary. We've been through a lot since I've been in this industry. I started, my first properties were HUD properties, and then I got into rural development and the tax credit, etc. But I think my favorite secretary of HUD was Ben Carson. And so at NAA, at Advocate, NAMA usually has their meetings at the same time. And so I go to the NAMA meetings, they're just in a different hotel. And the head of fair housing was a lady from San Antonio, Texas. And she was a Spanish lady who grew up in the projects. I mean, grew up in the projects. And her story, so I heard her that morning before we heard Ben Carson that afternoon. And her story was about how there was such abuse by people in the industry taking advantage of poor people and those less fortunate, but that she had a really strong mother and she overcame all that. She became somebody, you know. Well, Ben Carson, then I go to hear his speech later that afternoon, and he was raised in Section 8 public housing. And he and his brother, and his mother was very strict and was, you know, made them study and work hard. And he told the story about his mother didn't let him watch TV, made him do homework. And so some of the neighbors told her, you know, you're going to ruin those boys. And he jokingly said, because his brother worked for NASA, and he goes, my mother raised a brain surgeon and a rocket scientist, so I think she knew what she was doing. But when you hear the stories of those type of people who came from that position in life and worked their way up, those are the people I like representing us. And I wish that was sort of a qualification sometimes, because those two really understood housing and affordable housing. But, you know, I work every day with government employees, and I personally find that the ones I work with are great. They know their stuff. I think they have the same heart we do. I think they are motivated. So I hope that we are choosing right who we're laying off. I do believe our government's fat. I think we can save a ton of money. I think we can get rid of 50% probably of the employees, but let's just make sure we keep the right ones. And that's what I hope happens. But I've been doing this for so long, and a lot of people have said, you know, well, HUD spelled backwards is duh. We joke about that, but I don't do business with HUD. I do business with Michael and Kim and Sally, who represent and are employees of HUD. And that's how I always look at it. And it's important to me to make those relationships with those individuals, because we need to work together as a partnership. And it should never be adversarial. And I've never had that. I've had times where they were, but we have to overcome that. And so I think it's the same thing when we go to the Hill, depending, you know, doesn't matter what side of the aisle I'm on and what side of the aisle my representatives are on. We've got to find that common ground. We've got to understand that we're in this together, and we've got to make a difference. I'm really saddened by the divisiveness of our country, that it seems to be getting worse. But at the same time, I'm very optimistic and excited about the future. And we'll see. But I think NAA is making a difference. I think they're getting stronger and stronger and stronger every year.
Yeah, I agree. And you're to your point, we're humanizing the people that we're doing business with.
Yeah.
And when you get to know the person and not the title,
right,
then it breaks that barrier. Ooh, my light just fell. But it breaks that barrier, and it makes you a person to them. And I did that same thing with my residents when I managed property. And when my leasing consultant because that was my favorite job, I never wanted to manage. It just happened. But my leasing consultant, when she was leasing apartments, I would go out there and introduce myself, because I didn't want them to just think, oh, the property manager, she's in there with her door, you know, whatever, she's back there doing whatever. But I wanted them to know me, because I knew that not if, but when something went wrong, because it's property management and you're going to have a service request. You're
right,
going to potentially have an issue with a neighbor or somebody's dog or what have you. I want them to know me and know that I am there to help them. And the same is true for the folks that we do business with the PHAs and through HUD and even through our elected officials. We're all human. We all have more in common than we'd probably even realize. They're just stuck on the title sometimes, or the blue or the red, the R or the D.
Katie, when I first met you, your enthusiasm and your smile and your openness is what drew me to you. And I don't think I know still today what you do, and you told me you had a podcast, but I know what you're about and I know what you're like. And so when you speak, I listen because I know that you're passionate. And so it doesn't matter what your title, you're a genuine person. And that's what I like about people. When we have that rapport, like we have with each other, all the other stuff doesn't matter. I don't know what side of the aisle you're on. That's never come up. But I do know that you love this industry, and I think you love this country, and you're just passionate. And so that's the people I like to do business with. People that are not real, I don't really care about dealing with.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I started when I was 18. I was a leasing consultant and wanted to be a civil rights attorney. And
wow.
Oh, yeah. Because like I told you about my hometown before we started recording, there's a reason I wanted to be a civil rights attorney. I saw some things growing up, heard some things, and they weren't okay with me.
Right.
But if you speak up, then sometimes you find yourself with a target and like, well, if you have the law on your side, if you have that education, then you can make sure that the least of them are represented. You mentioned your church. I'm a person of faith as well. My dad's an ordained deacon and former Sunday school director, and there's something to be said about the least of them, and to work with those. And because someone lives in a property that has either a federally backed mortgage or they accept vouchers, they're not lesser than. They're not lesser than human beings. And I've said it before, and I've looked at y'all's website. You could never look at your website and your property and say, oh, that's affordable. You shouldn't be able to look and tell the difference because they don't deserve subpar living just because their AMI is a certain level. Right. And we've all worked very hard. We've been very fortunate, but most of us are just a few paychecks away from being in a horrible situation financially. And if we can have that humanity side of us, that's something that got me through. And it's ultimately what led to burnout, because when you give everything you have to the people that you manage and the property that you manage and the residents, it's hard to have anything left for yourself. And COVID did me in, boy. I went to DC. I ever tell you that? That's the first flight I ever took, was to Advocate.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Is that? Yep, 2020, the week the world shut down. And I was so terrified. I remember telling my husband, because I don't even want to speak it, but with what just happened at Ronald Reagan and knowing we're all going there in a few weeks, of course, I've had a little more reservation, but I travel with my prayer stone that my mother gave me. But I was terrified to fly. I told my husband, we talked about if we ever fly, we're going to fly together. That way, if God forbid something happens, it happens and we're together. But now that we have a child, he's 16, it doesn't make sense, and he can't come to all the conferences. But our AE, told me as I was chairing government affairs, like, you can do this. I'm going to be there with you. It's going to be fine. And I had to make the decision as to, was my fear going to get the best of me, or was I going to go with my passion and be a voice for, I'm not going to get emotional here, but for the industry that has given me everything since I was 18, from education, friendships, networking, professional development, and obviously that side won. We can't let our fear hold us back in life.
That's right.
Yeah, but I've loved our industry, and it's been such an honor to get to know you and others at the national level. I tell folks that are just getting started on our local level, if you sit with the people at the top, the conversations are different.
They are.
You're not talking about Mary and Johnny and Sally and, oh my God, what's she wearing? And, oh, that's not her husband. Yeah, it's not like that. Like sitting around the table, I think we were in Cincinnati. It was, I think, my first PAC recognition dinner. And you, Kristen McLaughlin, is it Patrick that's the AE there?
With me?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's Alan Lasek.
Alan, that's right. I don't know why I want to call him Patrick. Alan. So Alan was there. We were all around a table and we all just shared our passion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was a good time.
It was amazing. And I think we were in the African American History
I believe that's correct.
Museum. It was a beautiful place. And that was for me, I'm just a little property manager. I felt like I shouldn't be here with these people. Imposter syndrome. They're going to know I don't belong. But it's the most welcoming group of professionals that really are focused on making the industry better for that next generation, because we're looking to pass the torch. We want to have more people at the table. It takes all of us. Now, the market there where you guys are, you mentioned rent control, eviction sealing, record sealing. Are they wanting to seal the records? Because, of course, that's what we do for a living. That's our firm is Eviction Focused Legal Services. Are they wanting to seal all records, or have they asked anybody to come up with scenarios? Because we're facing kind of the same kind of thing here.
They have two bills. One of them is a complete sealing of eviction records. And then also they're talking about destroying those records after so many years. And so, it just puts us in an awkward situation when we're trying to decide who needs to live in our properties. And people who are habitual like that and who have problems, there's a lot of bills. We had 30 bills that were presented that have to do with multifamily housing. And I believe 21 were against us. So it's just not good. But we've been successful over the years, but it's getting harder and harder because they just keep pushing. Now, in New Mexico, we have a law that bans rent control across the state. And so this law that they're probably going to get passed takes that ban away, and then each county or city can decide whether they want rent control or not. We have a pretty large conventional development company here in Albuquerque who works with us on the apartment association. And if this goes into effect, they'll probably quit doing business in New Mexico. And that's what we can't get through to our representatives, that rent control is not what you think it is. And all you have to do is study the cases of the states who have enacted it and how bad it has been for them. And what we're seeing here is just, we don't get the time to talk. They won't give us audiences. Used to, before COVID, we could go, it's called the Roundhouse in New Mexico, our state building. And we could speak before the committees and had a little bit of time. COVID hurt us and they put us to what they were doing where, we could only do it virtually. And then I think they were doing it like 2 minutes. And now it's down to 1. And then they're limiting how many people can speak. I had a bill that I was going to speak against Sunday. And so I got on at 12:45 and the bill was being discussed at 4:00. So I was on a virtual meeting for over 4 hours waiting for our time. When it came up, I was in line to be able to speak. And at least 6 or 7 of us didn't get the opportunity. So, and the bill that we were against passed 9-1. And it's just disheartening that I feel like sometimes we don't get our voices heard, no matter. And we have 2 full-time lobbyists that work for the Apartment Association in New Mexico. So, we're doing everything we can.
Yeah, that's tough. And I can't imagine how frustrating that was to be on hold and then be denied.
Right.
Really, that's part of the legislative process.
It should be.
Yeah, it's almost like there should be a way to file a grievance against something like that, because they haven't heard all of the data to make an informed decision at that point.
Right.
They've only heard from one group, but it sounds like it's kind of the system is stacked.
Right.
in that way. And
True.
oh, that's unfortunate. I mean, we've got a rent control bill here in South Carolina, which we have a Republican controlled House and Senate, but we're writing a letter in opposition of, now we know it's not going anywhere, but we know it's just a matter of time before, like you said, you used to be able to do that. And my buddy John Maudlin, who's now here, is from California. He's telling me all the time, it's just a matter of time, Katie. We've got to get this stuff moving. We got to preempt what we can. And so we're writing a letter in opposition of that bill. And we did have an eviction record sealing bill, Senate Bill 56 this year, that seeked to seal all records. But the American Civil Liberties Union came to me. I'm part of like the Greenville Homeless Alliance. I volunteer with them on their working group, collaborative working group, in a new group, which I just found out that the gentleman who's over it listens to the podcast. So hi, Cody. But Cody is with Greenville Together, and we're trying to help end homelessness. But I've been invited to some of these tables to give a property management perspective, which I'm so incredibly fortunate to have been given those opportunities, because the American Civil Liberties Union, instead of just backing this and pushing in this, they said, okay, let's go to our housing providers. We're trying to get away from landlords. So housing providers, and see what their take is. So in South Carolina, there was no way for someone to get an eviction off of their record, even if it was filed in error. Like if you and I were roommates, you've signed a roommate release, I default and the management company accidentally puts your name on the rule to vacate, there was still really no way to get that off of your public record. So we're seeing what we can do for the industry here. So if they've paid their balance in full and the landlord or housing provider will sign off, okay, they've paid and they're staying, so we'll seal this, it's been paid. Or if it was filed in error, or if the resident successfully defends the eviction action, those were the three scenarios. Now, I don't know what they've done with the bill. I haven't seen any amendments made to it, but we're very fortunate. We're very lucky here to be able to have those opportunities, because it blows my mind that you guys can't even get speaking time to even say, hey, this is why, like to give any type of reason as to why they should consider anything else. That's
Absolutely.
insane.
It is.
Oh, what else are you guys are facing that? Is there any other like market, like you guys have like occupancy struggles in that market, or is occupancy pretty good?
Well, we're like the rest of the country. We're under a housing shortage. Our occupancy rate, I think, is in the very high 90s. I think we need a lot more housing, but as everything else, the government red tape and the problems that we face discourage people from doing it. And, as I've said, we're in the affordable housing. We are going to be opening a new property that we built within the probably next 3 weeks. It took us 7 years to get to here. And it was our biggest problem was our state. They say they want to put housing on the ground, and we have this money and we're ready to give it out. And we were looking for some gap financing, and they said we could have it. It took us almost 3 years from the time they told us we could have it till we got it. And it's just like, it's frustrating because these people publicize that they're doing good and they're giving out, but people like us that are in the trenches know that's not true. We don't understand the delays and why the money didn't come. But for us, that's just part of doing business, but it's really sad. We're doing our best. In the last year, not only did I buy 30 properties, but I think we acquired 10 others that we did major rehabs on, and they took too long. The permitting people, the inspections, nobody's in a hurry to get in. And these are properties that already have people living in them, and just trying to get them where we're past the rehab so that they can have a new apartment. We've bought a few motels and we've converted those. We have a hotel that's been sitting vacant now for 5 years, 6 years, and we're not any closer to getting that rehabbed than we were 5 or 6 years ago. So we're trying to be part of the solution, and government bureaucracy is not on our side. And it's just sad.
It is. They're leaving Americans unhoused for no good reason.
Right.
It's like creating a storm and then crying when it rains.
But when we get to the finish line, like this property that is new that we just built from the ground up, I believe it's 20% of it is for special needs and all of it is for affordable housing. And we're right across the street from a hospital that'll be working with us. And it's going to make a difference. It's going to be fantastic. We're all going to be proud and we're going to sort of forget that it took so long. But we should have had this open many, many years ago because the people who need it now needed it 7 years ago too. And it's just, that's something we've got to do a better job of, in our country. We've got to put the needs of our people above government bureaucracy.
So the hospital, are they providing like supportive services? Like, oh, that's amazing. That's some of what we're working on here with some of the Homeless Alliance and some of the initiatives here is rapid rehousing programs and what supportive services are there and how can we help these people not have generational homelessness?
That's absolutely right. We have a few properties that you have to be homeless to live, and one of those you have to be an addict and homeless to live there. And then we have a lot of our properties have homeless set-asides. And I think for us, because we are in the property management business, we are not caretakers. We don't know how to deal with that. I think that we also don't have consistency with our agencies to help take care of those people with those needs. And that's something that, we have to work on. Most of the time, those are nonprofit organizations that the executive director moves on and they fall apart or they lose their funding. And then we're sort of left without support on these types of properties. And so we've got to find a better way that people with special needs are taken care of. But overall, we're not quite 40% senior housing, and then the rest is family. And then, of course, all kinds of, like I said, homeless, etc. But we have, I think, every program you can possibly have is in our company. I don't know that that makes us experts, but we dabble in a lot of stuff. And so nothing surprises us. But what I think is sort of like we talked about our representatives, the staff that we have that work for me are the best there are. And everybody, even though they may come from different backgrounds, we all have the same desire. And I can't believe how much all of our people love our residents. And that's what makes me happy. I love going to our properties and see the interaction between the managers and the maintenance with the residents. But having said all of that, it's just people are cut out for different things. And to be in the industry that we're in, and more specifically affordable, I'm not saying it takes a special person, but you better have a heart for it because it is a different ballgame. And it's hard, it's just hard. A lot of these people really have needs and we try to accommodate that. But the people who want to take advantage of it, those are the ones we don't want to see here. Make room for those who really need the facilities. But, without getting negative, I think we provide a great service. I think our properties are beautiful. I think our residents are great, but my employees are the best. So,
That's awesome. I hope they hear this and they know how proud you are.
I don't want them to hear it. They'll think I'm soft.
No, we can't let them think that.
Yeah,
we can't let them think that. No,
Yeah.
no. Bobby is not soft. You heard it here, guys. What makes you the most proud to serve the industry, Bobby?
Wow. I don't know. I'm just going to say, because I've been asked that question, I don't know why I'm passionate about it. I don't know what it was instilled with me. I don't have some story that I saw somebody in need. And, that's not what happened. I got into this at the request of a friend and helped for a minute, I think 6 weeks, and left because I just was doing a little consulting and it intrigued me. So when I came back, I just said, I don't think I'll ever leave. And I was raised in the grocery business. My dad was in that. This was far from me. To this day, I've never lived in an apartment ever. So I just don't have that tie like that. It was just something that's in, I don't know if it's, I found my calling or if it's in my heart. I don't know how to say it. So I don't know what drove me into this, but what makes me love it so much, I can't pinpoint it. There's too much. Every day for me is fun. What I do is there's challenges constantly. You know, I love the success of our businesses that we have, but along the ways there's all kinds of problems. You know, we get sued a lot and, you know, trip and falls or whatever. I mean, those are the things that drag us down or try to, but we have to rise above that and just continue forward and make things happen. And every day I get out of bed, I during COVID, I never stayed home. I came to the office every day. I don't know that this helps, but there was something, I don't know if my mother made me do this, but I dress for work every day. I'm never in my sweats or whatever. And I feel like that helps me get up to be ready to do what I need to do. And so I'm passionate about it, but I'm just passionate about life, I think.
Oh yeah, it's very obvious to meet you to know that you're operating in your purpose and in your passion in this life. That's something that you are hands down the best dressed man in NAA. I said it. You are always sharp dressed from when we're raising money for PAC. You've got your custom made green suit on with your boots now, with your snakeskin boots, and always dressed to a T. Always dressed to a T. And I know you've got another meeting to get to. So one of the last questions I ask you, I'm a huge music fan. Do you have a favorite song?
Okay, so I'll be careful of my time. When you asked that, it was crazy because for the NAA board, that was a question that was asked. What was our favorite song? And we did it just amongst ourselves to share with the other board members. And one of the board members, I'll get emotional again. She saw Eric Clapton live a while back or a long time ago, and she really was touched by Tears in Heaven. So for me, that song came out in around 91, 92. His son was killed, and that's why the song Tears in Heaven. Well, I had lost a little boy and a little girl at 5 years old for my son and 7-year-old for my daughter, and their grandmother and their aunt and 3 cousins. They were all killed in a car wreck in 1984. And that's something you always carry with you, you know. But when I heard Tears in Heaven for the first time, I didn't know the story about his son. I was driving and I had to pull over to the side of the road and I cried like a baby because of what the song was saying. And it was so touching to me and where I was at. And so when I saw her put that down as her favorite song, because I struggle with that, but it made me the way it touched her. So I responded in my way. And so I have to sort of say that probably had one of the biggest impacts on me ever. I like all kinds of music, and I've just been a part of a lot of different genres. I played in a band, I played in a church band, but I think that song touched me more than anything.
Oh yeah, and that's a beautiful song, and I had no idea that it happened to you. Oh, and I think sometimes when those kind of things are brought up, it's a God wink to let you know that okay, it's like one of it's not a coincidence. I don't think there are coincidences in those kind of things, and yeah. And how amazing that you started your career in the industry after that and have gone on to just do amazing things and touch the lives of so many people. The industry has been made better because you serve. And those of us who serve with you are blessed to be here and blessed to serve with Pac-Man.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yes. And I look forward to seeing you here in a few short weeks in our nation's capital and to getting my Bobby hug.
It's been an honor to be with you today, and I appreciate you doing this. I think this service you're doing for our industry is great and touch a lot of people and inform people. So thank you, Katie.
Oh, thank you. And open invitation to come back anytime.
All right.
And thank you, guys.
See you.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of The Real Spill, a podcast where I spill on all things multifamily advocacy and how we as industry professionals can work together with our elected officials, stakeholders, and allies to bring about change for the rental housing industry. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've learned something new. Now, go be a voice. Until next time, Spills out.